My name is Kevin, and we're here to talk about civil society in Pakistan. So, in the early years of the creation of the Pakistan state, it was very unstable because on the partition, and basically, Pakistan was not fairly equipped or was very new to the political system of basically how to govern a state in the politics side. They, however, are um, equipped on the military side, so they are fairly educated on how to secure their assets or how to defend their territories on the military sides. But again, on the politics or diplomacy, they are fairly new. So, how civil society happened in India, Pakistan. So let's talk about how or what are the examples of authoritarian rule in Pakistan, because Pakistan had an unfortunate happenings on their democratic side of the political system, because their leader uh, died on tuberculosis and their prime minister was assassinated on a political rally. Now, this opted or forced Pakistan to lean on their military side as their governance. So, General Muhammad Ayub Khan stepped up and became basically the leader or the president, if you will, of Pakistan. So, what he did is he sealed parliamentary democracy and civil society in Pakistan, which is not good in terms of democratic ruling. Immediately, he banned political parties. He disqualified politicians from seeking public offices, suppresses political dissent or political coup, and subordinate the judiciary. So basically, he is even more powerful than the judiciary, and he nullifies the decision of the judicial system of Pakistan. Another one is when General Zia was elected, he was seeking political legitimacy. It made the state-sponsored Islamization program to co-opt sectarian and Islamist parties, enacted discriminatory Islamic legislation targeting religious minorities and women, which led to what we so call a martial law, a little bit of martial law, but not completely martial law. As time went on, civil society developed non-governmental organizations, but the non-governmental organizations failed to exercise their power because their leaders was not recognizing their powers to govern or to influence the territories. So these NGOs develop and continually try to talk to the government on how to deal with things, especially on the province areas, because non-governmental organizations wanted to focus their powers and influence on the provincial areas and leave the government on the capital or city areas. And then, slowly, with the realization of these governmental institutions, the people or the masses slowly recognize that they need more of the non-governmental organizations to help and govern Pakistan. Basically, that's
Good day, everyone. I am Angeline Enriquez, and I'm going to discuss about civil society, democracy, and military rule. So, Pakistan's development is hampered by the lack of a clear relationship between democracy and civil society. So, authoritarian governments dominated by the military have bullied, co-opted, and manipulated significant civil society groups to feed to their own purposes. So Pakistan appears to be on the verge of a very long period of military rule over the country's politics. Okay, so the rise of the armed right wing. In the absence of political agreement, societal enemy and violence result. The state's worldview encourages extremist religious groups' fatwas, threats of violence, and physical attacks and intimidation have been issued against NGOs that are spreading non Islamic cultural values, advocating Western development ideals, and working against the national interests. So, right wing leader Kazi Hussein Ahmed wants to bring NGO workers into the government. Sipahe Sihaba Pakistan preaches a violent and restrictive form of Sunni Islam. The SSP's declared objectives are to wage a war against Shias, have them declared non Muslims, ban their religious activities, and make Sunni Islam the official religion of the state. Forging coalitions. So the liberal elite and leading development NGOs and print media publicized the Pakistan Army's bloodless October 1999 coup. The ostensibly liberal military dictatorship that seized power in October 1999 coup created a new set of challenges and opportunities for civil society organizations. The military deftly aligned its reform plan with long-standing civil society demands for accountability, decentralization of power, gender justice, and good governance. Political parties are frantic to maintain their existing basis of support in the face of constant uncertainty generated by repeated disruptions of the political process, failing to integrate new economic and social factors as a result. A tale of two development NGOs. So, power decentralization has become a major topic of discussion in Pakistan civil society. A series of people's assemblies was convened by the Sunji Development Foundation or SDF, a social development group with the goal of debating and mobilizing public action to address imbalances that marginalize the populace. So certain civil society leaders were co-opted into the administration by General Musharraf. Political rallies were outlawed, parliament was shut down, and the constitution was suspended. The pro-military policies were unaffected by authoritarian consolidation. To its shame, the Patent Development Foundation or PDF, a flood relief of NGO that has branched out into the lucrative industry of election research, has glossed over flagrant military abuses of the democratic process. So the electoral abuses reveal Patton's pro-Musharraf attitude. Prospects. So a powerful Pakistani state has traditionally treated civil society as an afterthought. Since the mid 1980s, the growth of civil society organizations has quickened, particularly in the development sector. For the time being, General Musharraf's hold over state authority is maintained by the military's considerable powers and international assistance. The importance of the local and global contacts has not diminished. Without exaggerating the importance of international influences, it should be recognized that the breadth and type of the international community's contact with Pakistan is also likely to influence the direction of political change. So that's all for my report. Again, I am Angeline Enriquez and thank you for listening.
So hi, I'm Seth Gomez and now I'm going to discuss about the Burma civil society's skirting regime rules because during the year of 1988 of the month of August, the anti-government of the Burmese people were able to arise and combat their government in which the militants holds the power over their country. The militants were afraid to SMOs because if the SMOs would be able to raise their voice against them, the power that they have could be possibly weakened. So students and society organizations will be able to team up becoming as a social movement organizations. But then the civil society organizations were failed to get their powers as a pro-democratic movement. So the next one is the social movement model. So if we are going to define social movement model in an essayist way, social movement model is actually an individual who are linked by the same desire for social change. It aims to be more collectively, claims or achieve social change by coming together as one. The three sociologists were able to explain their different theories about the social movement model. So first is McAdam. He used the term political process model that explains social movement politically. Next is Taro that explains that the social movement as a power of movement in which the power is the major course to gain control over the country as a whole. And for Tilly, he suggests that the social movement is a historically specific cluster of performances that creates a public space to promote democracy to some under conditions. So the third one is the military rule and the fate of the civil society. As democratic system was introduced, the militants were afraid to weaken their power because of the civil society organization. So the National Solidarity Act of 1964 was issued to monitor every movement of the civil society organizations, because in every move of them, the government was able to decide to grant a permission or not. So the government was really building a block or a wall between the civil society organizations because they don't want to share the power to them on the other. And lastly, the 4-8 movements. The 8888 Uprising are also known as the People Power Uprising, and the 1988 Uprising is a series of nationwide protest and riot in Myanmar, the present name of Burma. It was happened during the month of August, 8th day of the year 1988, in which it was considered to be the most crucial happenings in Myanmar's history because many people were died, causing to seize power, violently suppressing the 4-8 movements. This happening is considered to be an unfinished revolution, and I think that would be all, and thank you for listening.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmate. My name is SHERINA ABEGAEL Hardinan, and I will be discussing creating civil society space overseas. As soon as it took control of the country, the junta gave SMOs three options. First, turn themselves into political parties by creating with the election commission. Second, turn themselves into non-political organization by registering with the home ministry. And lastly, refraining from political activities. The junta also manipulated the way that this association functioned by installing its supporter as their leader and using them as a tools for controlling society. Several students continue to engage in anti-government activities both covertly and openly. The junta arrested hundreds of members of anti-government organizations and sentenced them to a long prison term. To prevent student protests, it closed down all schools and universities for 3 years. Even after schools were reopened, the government shut them down again whenever student groups tried to organize protests. As a consequence, many political conscious students fled to border areas to join overseas Burmese pro-democracy organizations. Others work for political parties. The number and strength of overseas Burmese pro-democracy organizations have increased since the State Peace and Development Council, or also known as SPDC, took control. The All Burma Student Democratic Front, a militant organization. November 1, 1988, they founded the All Burma Student Democratic Front, or also known as ABSDF, as the poorest autonomous political organization. To pursue this decision, thousands of people, mostly students, youth, and intellectuals, left for the border areas near Thailand, India, China, and Bangladesh. The organization claimed to work the liberation of all nationalities under military dictatorship, to create a democracy with political freedom and respect for human rights, to obtain nationwide peace, and to introduce a federal system in the country. A Free Burma Coalition, a Ghostbuster. A Free Burma Coalition, or also known as FBC, was formed in 1995 by Zarni, a Burmese graduate student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, to force international cooperation out of Burma. On its own, the FBC was neither financially nor organizationally stable enough to confront various international corporations, including various student organizations, community groups around America, networking with human rights and student organizations for 28 Asian and European countries. Within a year, the FBC had managed to organize support groups on 120 school and colleges campuses. By 2002, they have established 50 colleges campuses in the U.S. By the end of 2001, with the assistance of its supporters, the FBC had forced more than 50 major international corporations. FBC activities have contributed to a political change in Burma. Growing American sentiment against multinational and the U.S. government consistent Burma policy have given the FBC more opportunities to expound its activities through appropriate civil society organization in the U.S. Beyond the reach of the state. In order to understand the role of civil society organization in authoritarian country, we must look beyond the legal space for civil society set by the state. Like in Burma, many political activists did not accept the restriction imposed on them because of limiting their freedom. Military government monitored the group closely and detained members who engaged in suspicious activity, but the informal study group had to keep their activities secret. And when political opportunity arose, they grabbed the opportunity to mobilize anti-government activities. This was the case with Burma 4-8 pro-democracy. 10,000 of students and movement leaders fled to a border area to create new civil society space on foreign soil by forming overseas Burmese pro-democracy organization. The activity of both All Burma Student Democratic Front and the Free Burma Coalition have kept the Burmese pro-democracy movement in the international limelight.
I am CHARLENE TORRES, and I'm going to report the China the limits of civil society in the Leninist state. Civil society, corporatism, and the Chinese case. In the case of China, there are two analytical frameworks, the civil society framework and the state corporatist framework. Civil society refers to a place for collective action centered on similar interests, goals, and characteristics, mostly from the government and commercial revenue-driven entertainment, good cause, development NGOs, local gatherings, ladies associations, religious associations, professional affiliations, worker organizations, social developments, alliances, and promotion gatherings are all part of civil society. State corporatism or state corporatism is that the general public and economy of a country are synchronized into substantial vested parties, and representatives of those vested parties settle any concerns through exchange and joint understanding. In contrast to a market economy which operates via rival-related monetary transactions, a market economy operates by collective bartering. In China, state corporatism is more powerful than state society. Corporatism is a grouping of institutional mechanisms. It is based on many sorts of regimes. The Chinese government is deploying state corporatists to manage its people in order to aid in a political reform. Historical perspective. Historical studies of Chinese state-society relations from the late Qing era to 1949 reveals several points. First, Chinese civil society during the late imperial era interacted closely with state actors. Appears to be a widespread consensus that Chinese civil society interacted closely with governmental actors throughout the late imperial era, prompting some to suggest that Chinese civil society different fundamentally from that evolving in Europe. Second, associational life diversified and societal power increased as Qing state declined. As the Qing state collapsed and stability deteriorated, associational life varied and societal power expanded. With the start of Republican era, Chinese society swiftly evolved, and many new forms of associations such as labor unions, chambers of commerce, and student and intellectual groups grew in power. Third, the consolidations of state power led to the domination and absorption of movements by state apparatus. The consolidation of state power, first by the Kuomintang in 1927 and subsequently by the CCP after 1949, resulted in the state apparatus dominating and absorbing these movements. This early wave of post-imperial activity fueled by highly organized parties, illiberal effects in both mainland of China and Taiwan. The All China Federation of Trade Unions is a national trade unions, governmental social organizations that represent workers' interests and protects their lawful rights and interests. It was founded in 1948. It is a mass organization that served as a relay belt for parties and government policies to employees while also transmitting worker problems and suggestions to the leaderships. The trade union law of 1950 was one of the first law enacted by Mao Zedong's new communist government. Business associations. Chinese people known as business-minded, under-reformed Chinese business associations have grown fast. Many are developed by the government which aims to merge entrepreneurial and economic interests into institutions that make the government less threatening and established, concentrate on their organizational progress rather than their relative autonomy. Future development. Future development entails the construction of any section or parts of the project that have not been built prior to the date of the agreement, as well as any major rebuilding or reproduction of any present segment of the project. In the future turn of events, there are numerous chances to change it for the better or for the worse. For example, in a mother state, it is better if the pioneer and society have an extraordinary relationships. On the off chance that they have this relationship, they can have a superior future in their nation. These advancements may affect the environment and economics of a state so far that it can go to be a better or most unbelievably terrible, yet it will be a pleasant if this advancement can be better, it is useful for the country and their associations. Furthermore, it may include the spectacular fear of a migrant crisis which may raise awareness about the profound character of transients. The instructions came to pass as well as being recalled for this enhancement of training might be more development in addition to supporting the children with having a better future for their lifestyles. It is ideal to trust that it might have a better productive fate of a country that tends to be an exceptional motivator to other countries that need to likewise be an unbelievable replacement and pleasant human beings that appreciate the effort of their legislature.
Hi, I'm John David Villaceran, and I'm going to be discussing official and unofficial civil society. So, moving on to the official civil society, Changes in Chinese history are based on how individuals engage in collectives, such as voluntary special associations. There were several social groups in 1989. These Chinese organizations may be classified in three ways. First, they were built from the ground up by the Chinese government. Second, the government created an organization in order to limit the size of the Chinese government. And finally, it was created by individuals throughout society. It is also divided into four key mechanisms. The first is legal and administrative, which focuses on how social organization can self-regulate to safeguard a healthy and proper interaction between the organizations. A slew of legislative and administrative regulations are in place. The professional business unit and the authorized government body are two of the supervisory entities for these organizations. These two were in charge of inspecting social organizations for any infractions of regulations and inflicting administrative penalty, as well as explaining why such applications were denied. It was expected of members of organizations not to compete with one another or overlap. Social organizations are often vertically and horizontally linked with government and political party structures. Secondly, financial independence and political dependence of social groups are in desperate needs of funds. It was categorized into three basic categories, devolved from the socialist state, state created, and individual or group created. Party state groups are top down organizations, whereas society initiated groups are bottom up organizations. In other words, top down organizations receive funding from government, but bottom down organizations are required to seek finances from society. Third, the Shenzhen Voluntary Federation developed double passing employees. It merely states that it is not just a nationwide phenomenon, but it was founded in 1989 by the Shenzhen City Communist Youth League's division. And finally, the CCP's ideology and interest representation is the growth of Chinese social organizations. CCP should be interested in pluralistic form of competition, which differs from the old state corporalist model, which is categorized by hierarchical big associations and strong state control. Unofficial civil society. Despite the legal status of social actors in China, the existence of an unofficial civil society is critical to a comprehensive understanding of the situation. Its expansion is directly tied to to the state's refusal to use corporate organizational strategies to capture and manage civil activity. That is all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I am AIRA ESCLAMADA, and I will discuss the conclusion. So, the growth of civil society in Pakistan has been warped by, by repeated military intervention, extended suspension of the political process, and the resulting fragility of democratic institutions and norms. With two-thirds of the country's population still living in rural areas under the thumb of overbearing military bureaucratic state, the powerful landed interests and armed extremist groups continue to restrict and curtail the activities of non-state public sector organizations, affecting their ability to develop and regulate societal self-governance norms and their ability to influence political change. A few vocal civil society organizations urge that the state be more inclusive and accountable, but the majority of their struggles are fought outside of the political sphere. Huge areas of this depoliticized civil society often draw privilege and benefits from the authoritarian state, rather than challenging the autocratic rule and shifting the political balance of power in favor of an open and accountable democratic system. So the dialectic between democratic and oppressive impulses in civil society has been informed by developments of the realms of state and political society, as well as their interaction with each other and civil society. A continuing legacy of colonial authority, the specific demands of post-colonial state construction, and the ruling elite's need for political legitimacy, and extended periods of military control have all impacted the nature, make-up, and development of civil society in Pakistan. Thank you for listening.